Hello everyone and welcome back to BarcaBuzz. And this is another video talking about the 2-1 loss to Las Palmas today in Montjuic, probably tomorrow when you're watching this. But we have some questions from you guys. We asked you on Twitter. We were going to do a video, answering you guys' questions. So you did hand them over. And obviously, if you have any questions for the next one, just put them out on Twitter on the next match. So, Oscar, can you ask us some questions from our beautiful audience on Twitter?
Right, well, let's start off with Jay McElveny. Hopefully, I pronounced your name correctly there, Jay. Let's start with, so there's a couple of different questions that Jay sent through, but let's start with the first and foremost. What does Szczesny need to do for a start? I'll come to you first, Tal. What does Szczesny need to do for a start? Is that a big talking point, Szczesny versus Iñaki Peña?
Yeah, I think until Iñaki Peña has, until he has this consistency where he's going to save us many times, like Courtois does for Real Madrid, or where, for example, Becker, not Becker, I forgot his name now, the Liverpool goalkeeper that is replacing Alisson. I don't have his name right now. Keller, that's it, thank you. So until he starts doing the same things, there is always going to be debate, and we're not going to be sure about Iñaki Peña. But I guess what Szczesny has to do is hope that Iñaki Peña fails or keeps failing, even though I did think, like we talked about earlier, I did think that it's not his fault, like today's match. But I think there's not much you can do. Like, normally, managers don't like to replace the first goalkeeper, even if Iñaki is not a first goalkeeper, but he was after the Szczegen had been injured. So I guess there's nothing, in my opinion at least, there's nothing Szczesny can do, because obviously he can train really well, and if he's going to be a really good training, he's going to play. But at the same time, until Iñaki Peña is definitely not the keeper we want, there's nothing he can do, in my opinion. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a discussion point all season. The second Iñaki Peña either makes a mistake, or we have a game or a run of games where we can see goals, it's going to be a talking point. I'm not personally convinced that Iñaki Peña is a better goalkeeper than Szczesny, even though Szczesny hasn't played much football at all in the last 6 months. I'm not convinced. I think if you get any kind of run of games from Szczesny, I think he is a better goalkeeper than Iñaki Peña. I'm not necessarily saying that Szczesny is going to be Courtois. I don't think he's ever been that level, to be honest, in his career. I don't think he's going to be Alisson Becker. But I do think he can be a relatively solid sort of 6, 7 out of 10. And whether Iñaki Peña is that or not, who knows? It has been quite an iffy kind of couple of games from Iñaki Peña. And to be honest, probably the best games this season have been the Bayern Munich and Real Madrid run. Yeah, like that kind of period of games. I think he was probably excellent when it came to the shot stopping side of things. Distribution bothers me with Iñaki Peña quite a bit. I think he sweeps well. I think he does, in terms of, I think he actually does it a lot better than Szczesny in terms of knowing when to come off his line. I think that's probably his biggest strength. I think we've seen a couple of times where he's totally nullified an attack doing that. But I think Szczesny just has more to his game at this moment in time. I think it's going to take a lot before the Copa del Rey for Szczesny to get back into the team. But I think that ultimately the Copa del Rey, maybe the Super Cup in January as well, I think there'll be Szczesny's two big opportunities there. If he plays well in those games, if he gets the opportunity in those games, which I think he will in at least one of them, probably the Copa del Rey, there's chances there to put Iñaki Peña under pressure. I don't think this will be a case of we're going to suddenly be able to go in January and get another goalkeeper. I don't think that at all. I think this is our situation now. It's Iñaki Peña or Szczesny. I think ultimately to really hit our ceiling, I said in another video, we're going to need better than both, to be honest. But in the here and now, I'd say Szczesny probably does deserve a chance, but it's not going to come till January. I really don't believe that. But my overall take is that I think you're going to have to see for Szczesny to come out of the team before January. Peña would have to have an absolute nightmare next couple of games, to be honest, for that to happen. But who knows? That's probably covered that one, guys. Let us know in the comments down below your take on Szczesny versus Iñaki Peña. Is Iñaki Peña getting too much leeway from Hansi Flick at this moment in time? Let us know, guys. Right, next question. It's an interesting one. How reliable, this is also from Jay McElveny, how reliable is Dani Olmo? Okay, so I take this as not so much in terms of when he's on the pitch, how good is he? It's more in terms of the injury records, the lack of consistency in terms of being able to start games. I mean, what's your take on Dani Olmo at this moment in time? Because I have heard of a pretty crazy stat on Dani Olmo, and whilst you answer this question, I'm going to actually look up this stat just to verify it is correct, because it is absolutely mind-blowing. What is your take on Dani Olmo? Are you concerned about this, Tal, in terms of this run of not big injuries, but little injuries that are just stopping his game time all the time?
Yeah, I think I've always been concerned about this, because we knew before he had arrived, we knew that Dani Olmo is this kind of player with this injury prone, that you never know if he's going to play 5 games and then get injured for 15, which is not what happened right now, because he played a few games and then he was injured for, I can't remember how long it was now, like a month, I think. So obviously this is going to hurt you, not only because you don't have him for however much time that takes, but also because you don't normally get back to the same level, which is not what happened to Dani Olmo, by the way. He came back great. He actually had a good couple of games, but at the same time, I guess you look at players like Gavi, who you get injured, it takes time to get back to the same rhythm that you used to have. So obviously, not only that you don't have him, like he's not going to be able to play, but also you don't know if he's going to get back in the same level of fitness. But I think actually he scored against Brest. It was a great goal, by the way. But I didn't think he played well against Brest, and I thought it was the first game where he actually didn't perform, even though we scored, even though we won 3-0, and normally we don't critique the players too much when we win. But that game, I genuinely thought he was off. I thought Dani Olmo had obviously he hasn't had many games, but still it was his worst game at Barca, even though he scored, which is a positive. But no, I guess we can't rely on him too much to answer his question, because this guy tends to get injured. It's not Dembele, right? Dembele gets injured a lot more, but at the same time, Rafinha, for example, is a player who, I hope I'm not going to jinx it, but he almost never gets injured. And Dani Olmo is just not that kind of player. And I think we saw it in Leipzig. Don't know what's your take on this, but this guy gets injured all the time, and maybe you have the stats to show that.
Yeah, it's not a massive surprise, as you said, mate. This is probably the biggest worry with Dani Olmo. It was never necessarily the quality. It was more in terms of the fitness levels, in terms of, because Dembele tends to get big injuries. When Dembele was missing, he'd been missing for 6 or 7 months at a time. Dani Olmo, he's had some big injuries, but they tend to be 1 or 2 games at a time. It doesn't tend to be anything much bigger than that. So I think it's just going to be something that's going to go on throughout the season, where it's going to be frustrating, where he gets a run of games and then all of a sudden gets that little injury, missing the game, and it will hurt his momentum. And I think you have started to see it, as you said, mate. I don't think it was just the Brest game either. I didn't think Dani Olmo was great against Celta Vigo. I didn't think he was great against Sociedad, to be honest. Not terrible, but I think there has been a bit of a drop-off even before this injury, where Dani Olmo probably has been rushed back a little bit too soon. It is absolutely nuts, the stat I'm about to tell you. Have a guess how many games Dani Olmo started this season?
This season, how many did he start?
This absolutely blew my mind, this.
1?
It's more than that. He started 5, but he started 5 games, actually.
Wait, he started 5 games?
In all competitions.
I didn't...
In all
okay, so sorry, like 2 in the Champions League. I don't know why, I just thought 1, because I just remember like that day started and they said normally this guy comes off the bench. Right, because I'm not counting the start of the season because of the international break.
If you are correct, it's I think it's 2 since his it'll be 3 since his initial injury, when he got actually injured in the first place. That's that's pretty nuts. That in terms of out of 20 games, he started 5. That is mad.
So I went too far with my prediction.
But still, I actually heard 6 mentioned on Twitter, kind of thing, and I thought it's actually even worse than what I thought it was, to be honest. And this isn't to dig Dani Olmo out. We know he doesn't. No one wants to get injured, kind of thing. No one wants to be unreliable in terms of fitness. And I think in general, he has come back from injury pretty well this season. I think he has got into the flow of things pretty well. But I think that last injury he's had has probably kind of like hurt his rhythm a little bit. And I think the fact he played a lot for Spain in the last international break as well. I think he played 180 minutes, so I think he played the full 90 on both games or something close to that. So that is not ideal. That is not ideal, to say the least. He's still played less minutes in the Liga than he did at the Euros. We're in.
That is crazy.
And he still played less minutes in the La Liga than he did in the European Championships last summer, and he wasn't even a starter at the European Championships until later in the tournament. So it's definitely a concern to me. I've got no concerns about Dani Olmo performance-wise. I think when Dani Olmo was on the pitch, Barca always looked better.
He's already scored 5 goals, to be fair to him, in La Liga this season. In 4 starts.
His output has been as good as anyone in the team. It's six goals in all comps, 5 in La Liga. So he's actually scoring more than the goal a start at this moment in time. So you can't. And when you consider Dani Olmo's main strength isn't really goal scoring, I'd say. I think it's more of his all-round game. It is pretty nuts, that stat. But of course, no assists yet from Dani Olmo. Outside of his game, does need to pick up a little bit. But I think ultimately, is he reliable? If we're being honest, it depends what you mean by reliable. When Dani Olmo's on the pitch, he will be reliable.
He's good.
For the Barca team. But he was never going to be reliable in terms of starting 30 games this season. I think it was delusional to think he'd be able to suddenly start, especially in a really intense system. Leipzig didn't play half as much of it in terms of like having half as much running, half as intense a system as what this Hansi Flick system is. So it was always going to happen, really. But I think the main thing is with Dani Olmo is that he's fit for the big games this season. He's fit for the Champions League knockouts. He's fit for the Clásico towards the end of the season. He's fit for the Atletico Madrid games. These big games this season is when you need Dani Olmo. But can I say that reliably that he will be? It's a complete toss of a coin. It's probably less than a toss of a coin at this moment in time. We're starting 5 hours. So I think it's harsh on Dani Olmo because if you look at that, you say he's a flop. If we're being absolutely brutal about it, you'd say he's a flop. But obviously, when you watch him play, you'd say he's nothing close to being a flop. So he's a very strange player in that regard, Dani Olmo. I think that would be my sort of takeaway from it, mate.
Absolutely. I think he's been one of our best players, but as you said, he's not been playing as much. He's not been playing as much as Rafinha, even Lamine, even though he got injured. Because these guys, whenever they play, it's normally 90 minutes. And this guy, Olmo, obviously, 404 minutes played in La Liga. And we are, as I said, in December, which is a crazy stat. But that's what is the next one?
That averages at 4.5 games by December. That is shocking.
That's crazy. Yeah, it is. It is. Hopefully, he's gonna be. Yeah, hopefully he's gonna be available, man. Because, as you said, we do need him even more so when we saw today. I thought Pablo Torre actually played quite well. Firmin certainly did not. I thought Firmin's performance was really bad, but that's for another video. What other questions do you have there from our Twitter audience?
Sticking on with the midfield then. How can this Barca? So this is also from Jay as well. We have no midfield stability simply because Marc Casado is out. Is this the case in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say because even though Casado is I think it's fair to say that he's been maybe our second best midfielder this season because Pedri, let's be honest, Pedri has been exceptional. Pedri is generally one of my favorite players today in football. So maybe you can argue maybe the best player, the second best, because Marc Casado has been amazing. I didn't think his absence was gonna hurt us so much because let's be honest, today I think we needed him defensively mainly, because we were caught out many times on the back. So it's hard to say this one. I still think once Lamine Yamal gets back, the games are going to look really different. But I don't think we've become too dependent on him. But I certainly didn't like the performance of Fermin Lopez today. And I think Gavi, he wasn't that bad, but it's not the Gavi that we're used to. What do you think about the absence of Casado?
I think it's definitely hurting us. There's no question about it. I think it probably sort of emphasises the point that I think if you put the Barca strongest 11 out right now, and there's a Gavi in this current sort of physical condition, you'd have to say Marc Casado is the more reliable option of the two. I think over the season, I think Gavi, because I saw a debate in terms of Gavi last season before the injury or Marc Casado sort of the first sort of 3 months of this season, which has been better. And I would still say Gavi personally last season. I think Gavi was one of the best midfield performances individually since kind of like your Xavi and yesterday's in the Barca midfield. I thought he was that good, and he wasn't at that level in terms of Xavi and Iniesta, but probably the best individually at the time. I'd say he was absolutely unbelievable. I think he was Barca's man of the match pretty much every week. Or certainly felt like that in the early stages of last season before the injury. But Gavi's not at that level at this moment in time. We have to accept that. Big injury. It was always going to take time.
Yeah.
And I just think, Casado, it's more of a reflection of how good Marc Casado is rather than us being over-reliant, I'd say. I don't think our main issue today was midfield. I'd still say that much, but I think it certainly looks better from a defensive moment when you've got Marc Casado in there, because I think he's our most natural six, outside of Marc Bernal, of course, in the squad at this moment in time. I think he just naturally plays the role really well. Pedri pushes on between the lines. I just think Casado and Pedri complement each other's games so well on and off the ball. So definitely got less stability without Casado in the team. But that's more of a reflection of Casado, and let's look forward to when he's back available in the team as well.
Absolutely, and hopefully that's going to be soon, because we do need him, even though we didn't expect, at least I didn't expect to be so reliant on this guy. But what I think, was it his last question, or did he have another one?
That is actually the last question from Jay. So let's go on to another question. This is from Twitter user Black and Grey. So what do you think is the reason for dropping points in the recent games, and how can it be fixed? I'll come to you first on that one, mate.
Yeah, I think that's a hard one, because I think that there's never one answer, right? Like, it's a series of things that happen and, that make the team fail. I think one of them is definitely, in the end, we're not going to win. We have 38 games. We're not going to win 38 games in La Liga, right? Like, it had to come at some point that we would have this step off where we just can't win as many games, because we were going at a really good rate. So I think, firstly, it's one of those, like, you can't win every game. Sometimes, you have some luck. I can't think of any games, maybe against Bilbao we had a bit of luck, but normally, like this season, we have been just smashing teams, so we didn't have so much luck. For example, when we won the title under Xavi, we did have a lot of luck with all the 1-0 wins. This time, not so much. We have been scoring 4 and 5 plus many La Liga teams. But I think it's one of those. So, yeah, the luck obviously plays a part. But the second thing, and I think it's really obvious, Lamine Yamal. As we said earlier, 100% win rate, 11 out of 11 with Lamine, and 0 out of 4 without Lamine. And I genuinely think what's going to happen next is we've got Mallorca on Tuesday, and normally I'm really, let's say, I don't tend to say this type of thing, but I think we're going to win simply because Lamine is going to be back. I genuinely have this much faith in Lamine, even if he wasn't great today. I think Lamine has become this kind of player. I don't want to mention the other guy who used to play right wing for 17 years in our club, but when he's there, you're a lot more calm, and you think, okay, we're going to score at least 1 or 2 because he's there. So I really think
17 years, by the way, because I thought, is he talking about Ousmane Dembele here?
No. Thank God he didn't last 17 years. But yeah, the other Argentinian that I think just going to be fine. The people are gonna forget now all of the problems we have simply because we're gonna have Lamine Yamal back. Maybe he's not gonna score, but he's probably gonna have a decent game because he normally does have some really good games. So yeah, I think that is the main point. We didn't have Lamine Yamal, and we can't forget that. We got used to it because we've been playing really well, even against Bayern Munich and Real Madrid when we were lacking few players. But Araujo is not back yet. Christensen is not back yet. Frankie is back, but he's not in full fitness yet. And if I'm going to go through this list, like, we have a lot of players. Obviously, there's Stegen, needless to say. Ansu Fati, Marc Bernal. Ariel Garcia has just come back this match, even though he hasn't come on. We have a long injury list, and it's not an excuse, right? It doesn't like justify a loss against a side that is 17th in La Liga. But if you're asking for a reason, for me, that is obviously one of the reasons. And the last one that I want to mention is you can't be as motivated for every single game. I think today the players were a little naive, thinking, this is Las Palmas, we're good. Obviously, I'm not in their heads, so I can't know. But at the same time, I felt like they were not giving their 100%. For example, maybe you have to run for a ball, and it's not like the Clásico, right? In El Clásico, you're running for it, you're fighting for it, and maybe this time it was like, it's fine, we're gonna get the ball back, we're all good. think they were a little too calm in this match. What do you think are the reasons for this decline, let's say, in the past 4 games?
I agree. I think the injuries is the big one. I mean, I won't. We don't need to go into it too much because if you look at it, from a pure aesthetic of, you go from a left-hand side of Balde, Rafinha. No disrespect, it feels like I'm really digging these 2 players out. But you go from Balde and Rafinha to Gerard Martin and Ferran Torres. It's a drop-off. It's too big a drop-off. Same goes with Lamine, of course. Lamine's the biggest one by far of the injuries. Dani Olmo as well. Ultimately, when Lamine's not there, you're having to play Fermin Lopez out wide, or you're having to play Pau Victor out wide. It's just a too big a drop-off. So I think this is going to be something that's going to happen until we get that other big forward signing, through. If it's a Rafa Leao, if it's a Nico Williams again, whoever it is. I think you're going to see this drop off because there is too big a drop off whenever we try and rotate or have an injury or even just a general drop of form. I think that's probably the biggest factor fundamentally because you're not going to get the same results if you've got as good a left-hand side as I just mentioned to what is, I mean, no disrespect, but I can't think how low down you'd have to go in La Liga say that Gerard Martin and Ferran Torres would look like a good left-hand side. You'd be going, in terms of down the league, in terms of teams that would say, yeah, we'd take that as a left-hand side. It's a mid-table.
You'd be going to Las Palmas, wouldn't you?
It is. It's a mid-table left-hand side, and that is the reality. No disrespect to those players. They do give everything, but they're just not good enough at this moment in time. And then I think the biggest thing is the injuries, but of course as well, I think the opponents are adjusting to us as well. I think they know to slow us down in the attacks, in terms of not letting us get into that rhythm, in terms of being able to attack at speed, in terms of dropping back into 2 banks of 4, really blocking space, even if it is kind of making them suffer in terms of possession. Giving us a lot of easy possession, and we're then having to try and break down a low block. But that is not our strength at all. We're seeing it a lot this season when teams are able to defend in the compact manner, especially without Lamine, now to break it down with his 1v1 dribbling, or Dani Olmo with his vision and own sort of individual quality. It's very difficult for us then to produce. It is basically give the ball to Rafinha and hope for the best at that point. So I think that's one thing. Defensively, teams are adjusted to us a little bit. Although, what I will say is, when we do get Lamine back, Dani Olmo fully fit, that won't be as much of an issue because it is a lot more difficult to do what teams are doing against us when you've got Lamine Yamal. It's all well and good saying, oh, we'll just drop in a low block. But if Lamine Yamal beats 2 players, you've then all of a sudden got to shift 2 or 3 players across and you open up space. So it will become a lot easier for us when those players are available. But then as well, we've got the issue of the high line. Teams are now working out how to sort of play against the high line. I think I've said before as well, you're not seeing so many tight calls now. You've seen teams being willing to play the pass later or earlier, at times as well. You've seen strikers start their runs from deep in front of Pau Victor and Inigo Martinez, and then sort of going onto the ball wider. So it it makes the situation more difficult for the strikers to score from, but it also means our 2 centre-backs, Pau Victor and Inigo Martinez, have got to cover a lot more distance because they're starting from so far out wide and so deep. All of a sudden they're having to match the runs from very deep kind of thing. So teams are finding ways to get our high line. We've not got enough pressure on the ball. So yeah, there is issues tactically, but I think a lot of it does come down to, as you said as well, Ronald Araujo coming back in. I personally think, as much as I think Kubasi and Inigo have been absolutely brilliant for us this season, and the last couple of games is not going to change that for me. But having said that, I do think probably the first goal and the goal against Sociedad, and maybe another goal as well, don't happen with Ronald Araujo in those situations purely because of the recovery pace. So I do think that is a factor as well in terms of getting individuals back in the team. So I'm not going to suddenly say that tactically we've got to totally change things, but that is at the minute what's causing us to drop points. So let's go on to the final question that we've got here. Bear with me 1 second.
It was about Lewandowski, wasn't it?
From FCB Gabby. I won't say the full question because it's Yeah, there's some choice words in there. Why is Lewandowski not getting dropped when he's not being, let's just say, not being great the last few matches? I mean, what is your thoughts on this, Tal?
So I think there's two ways to look at this. First one being Lewandowski is having an outrageous season. He scored many goals. I think it's something like 22 goals this season, right? In all competitions, which is amazing. So I think the first reason is you have these players where you say, I'm not going to drop them because I think at any point they're able to score, even though I'm not a fan of this thought process because statistically any player can score at any time. But yeah, I think you have that. Maybe Flick doesn't want to take him off because he knows he's having an amazing season. So even if he doesn't have the best match, he can still find a way to find the back of the net. The second reason, which is for me like the bigger, the more central reason, is that we have no replacement. We had Vitor Roque, who we fought for, and we said, we have to get this guy as soon as possible. We'll pay more to get him in January and not in the summer. And then we got him, and we got rid of him really quickly after just 6 months. So yeah, I think mostly like, who are you going to bring on? Obviously, you can say maybe almost a false nine, or maybe even Lamine, which is something that, by the way, I thought Hansi Flick was going to try at some point. But you don't really have this number 9, and I think almost everyone is going to agree that Ferran is not going to do that role, or maybe we just don't want him to. But what's your take on this?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is all well and good saying, in terms of Lewandowski, I don't think he's even been that bad, to be honest. I really don't. I think if you're being realistic, he's a 36-year-old centre forward, probably coming towards the end of his career at top level. I think he's still got another year or two, I'd say, at playing at this level. I do believe that. I think what it will be is when Lewandowski sort of hits 38 is when you'll probably see quite a sharp decline at that point. But I think we'll probably be in a position then to sort of move Lewandowski on. But I think at this moment in time, he's one of the top scorers in Europe. He's one of the most consistent goal scorers in Europe. So, yes, today's performance, I think, was probably his worst of the season by far. I think he was absolutely shocking today. I'm not going to get around that at all. I was so disappointed with Lever. I can't even put it into words because I think when he's a leader, I really think he's got to be better than what he was today. I think he really has got to lead by example. In terms of players around him, younger players around him, he didn't really... just every single time he got the ball, he made the wrong decision. But I've seen enough of Robert Lewandowski under Hansi Flick to say that he's guaranteed goals, absolute guaranteed goals.
Yeah, I suppose the question was, I guess that obviously I don't want him to get dropped. But the thing he's going to start every single match.
I think if we had a situation where Dani Olmo was fully fit, I could see the case for putting Dani Olmo into a false 9 and go for a different midfield setup of say if Marc Casado was available, you could so go Casado, Pedri, Frenkie de Jong as a 4-3-3 and go with it like that. And says we have Dani Olmo's false 9 and Yamal and Rafinha running off him. But we haven't got that situation, and I don't think we need to drop a forward to put in a midfielder. I don't really see a case for that. I certainly don't believe we should be dropping Lewandowski for a Ferran Torres or a Pau Victor. With the greatest respect, you'd have to be really looking at Ferran or Pau Victor with tinted glasses to say that they'll offer what Robert Lewandowski does. Even as bad as Robert Lewandowski was today, I wouldn't have confidently said that Ferran Torres would have done any better today, or Pau Victor, or any of the options really. So I've got to look at it as a point of view of it's all well and good saying I do believe Lewandowski should play less minutes just for his own sort of longevity, but realistically it's not going to happen. Certainly until Dani Olmo's fully fit. You could say Dani Olmo goes into false 9, Firmino or Torre sort of play at the 10, but I'm not sure Firmino's doing enough either to say that you change the whole system just for the case of getting Lewandowski rest or out the team, whatever way you want to put it. I don't see the point. Lewandowski's scoring goals for this team. He has got a fantastic link up with Lamine and Rafinha. I don't see a reason to change it. I think we've got to change other bits of the team. Lewandowski's not the one, but he should be playing a lot less minutes. He shouldn't be playing against Brest.
Yeah, that's the point.
There's no reason for him to play against Brest. There's no reason for him to play full 90s when we're sort of like 3 or 4-0 up. And we start to sort of feel that now in terms of that case of where we did have the opportunities to rest Lever, we didn't take it. But yeah, I think he's been very harsh. I think if you look at, say, the so-called top strikers in the world at this moment in time, they're Erling Haaland. Lewandowski, I would genuinely say, with my chest actually, I'd say this, has been better than Haaland this season. I genuinely do believe that.
He has been scoring more.
He's been scoring more. He's been
and
more
that's what a striker does in the end of the day.
He's never been a pretty player, Robert Lewandowski. He's not going to become a pretty player. I don't see a case for doing this at this moment in time. I think the time to sort of phase Robert Lewandowski's out is when you have a Rafa Leao in the team, and then you can say Rafa Leao goes to the left, Rafinha goes to the right, Lamine either goes inside or as a 10 or a centre forward, and Dani Olmo sort of fills the front four. But we're not in that situation yet. We're still at the start of the project, and at the start of the project, you still need reliable players, even if they're not at full fitness, at full performance level. I don't see the case of dropping Lever at this moment in time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping that he meant, I don't know because I'm not in his head, but I'm hoping that he meant getting subbed off in the final minutes. That's how I saw this question. But if he did mean like genuinely drop him off and play someone else instead, you can't really do that. This guy has been exceptional. Maybe one of our best, one of our best players this season. And he has been scoring goals for fun. So you can't drop Lewandowski in a minute. But as you said, I do think he needs to get subbed off simply because, as you mentioned, 36 years old, he's not going to get any younger, even if his body is in good shape. So obviously you can drop him off. He's been exceptional. But at the same time, I think he does need to play less minutes. For example, you're 2-0 up against Brest. Obviously, we ended up winning 3-0. But get him off straight away. Same with Lamine, by the way. We just don't want these guys to get injured. That's it. That's how I see it too. So
comfortable in the game. I really do believe that I'd be tempted to take the whole front four off, to be honest. I really would. I think especially with the way the season's going, we know how reliant we are on them. I think any chance to drop or rest or anything like that, I think we've got to take it now, really. I really do believe that. And
absolutely.
So this week, the next 4 or 5 games in all competitions, there is not going to be a chance we can rest Lewandowski because they're all going to be close games. All going to be quite big games as well. We're talking about Dortmund away, Atletico at home in this sort of 4 or 5 game spell, Betis away on next Saturday, Mallorca as well, even on Tuesday is going to be a really tough game. So Lewandowski is going to be busy until at least Christmas. It's what I'm thinking.
It is. So once again, thank you all guys for your questions. And if you want to send us some more questions for the next episode, obviously feel free to do so in our Twitter page or Instagram or wherever you can find us.
Or YouTube comments
many platforms.
Well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even comment on this video, guys. Check out our other videos as well, because there's plenty of post-match content going out. We've just done our post-match for the game itself. Obviously, we've done the reaction to your questions, and we're also going to film some things we've learned from the game as well. So plenty of content, guys.
Yeah, and we have learned a lot. So thank you so much for being here, Oscar, and see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching.
Cheers, guys.